This video is part of a series helping you to develop effective revision techniques as you prepare for your exams. Today we're looking at some different ways that you can revise key definitions. I've put definitions into a separate video because I do think of them as a separate thing, but really the easiest way to learn your definitions is by writing a closed question, so a question that just has one particular very short little answer, and putting that on a flashcard. So I suppose you could think of these as a subset of flashcards and point questions, and you may find it useful to watch the videos that I've done about those topics. Ideally, for a content-heavy subject like science, you want to go through the specification and have a definition written down for every new piece of vocabulary that you've learned as part of this GCSE or this A-level, and that could be quite a lot of words. Now, as we've said with quite a few of these revision techniques, your starting point needs to be finding a reliable source of information. There's no point in you learning a definition that isn't then going to get you the marks in the exam. So your first starting point should be your exam board specification, and particularly for GCSE there are likely to be a number of words defined within that, and if that's the case then they can ask you to use the exact wording from the specification, so you want to make sure that that is the wording that you're learning. Now, if a particular word isn't defined in the specification, your next port of call should be all of the past papers that you have available to you. So you should go through those and find any questions that ask you to define a word or ask you what a word means, and then look at the mark schemes and see what was credit given for in that year. Now, if a word doesn't appear in the specification and it hasn't come up before in the past papers, then it's much less likely that you are being expected to know a precise definition, and you might have a little bit of wiggle room. But you still need to know what these words mean, because as we've said, you're not going to be able to answer more complicated questions if you don't know the key vocabulary. So in that instance, you might want to start looking at the glossary of the textbook that you use, or you might find that quite a lot of knowledge organisers also have lists of definitions. Finally, if none of those contains a definition for a particular word, then you may need to resort to the dictionary. Now, dictionaries are great, and obviously they have good definitions, but you just need to be aware that often the exam boards are quite picky, so if they have put a definition into the specification or into the past papers, then you want to be using that before you turn to the dictionary. So it's kind of your last port of call. Now that you have your definitions, we're going to look at 3 ways to revise them. The first one is by matching them up. I'd suggest that this is your best starting place for any definition because it allows you to get familiar with those definitions and build your confidence up without putting you under too much pressure. It's going to help you to build a general awareness of what each word means, even if you haven't quite mastered the exact wording yet. One good way to do this is to make paired cards, which you could number on the back so that after you've paired them up, you can check and see that you've got the 2 number 3s together and the 2 number 11s together. And this is also a good way to help you gradually make the exercise more challenging because you can gradually add more pairs of cards. The second really useful thing you can do when learning definitions, which people often don't think about, is actually saying them out loud. Doing this often helps you to take the information in better than just reading it silently in your head, and it also allows you to start to put some emphasis on key words, and that often makes it a bit more memorable. So rather than just reading silently in your head the use of bacteria to produce leachate solutions containing soluble metal compounds, when you say it out loud, it's more likely to come out as the use of bacteria to produce leachate solutions containing soluble metal compounds. And so because you're emphasising those words, it just helps you to remember them a little bit better. One more strategy that is good for this kind of closed, repetitive practice, particularly where you do have a really precise definition that you need to learn word for word, is one that you probably used in primary school for learning spellings. Look, cover, write, check. So you have your list of definitions which you look at and you read through, and then you cover it up and you try to reproduce the definitions, and then you check your work. So say maybe we've written a little definition for each of these 3 words, and then afterwards you go through and you check it again and you mark in a different colour, showing where you haven't quite included all of the information, or maybe you've got something wrong. The advantage here is that when you go back to this topic, you can see exactly what you missed out last time, and so you can really focus on those bits first and making sure that you improve the thing that you were struggling with. Finally, lots of people have put together their own online quizzes using platforms like Carousel or Quizlet, and these can also be really useful for self-quizzing and making sure that you learn your definitions that way. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope you now feel that you've got a few more strategies to help you to memorise these key definitions for your exams. If you did find this video useful, then don't forget to like and subscribe for more revision videos coming soon.